All right, so look at the gross margin on this beast. Gross margin is just gross profit divided by revenue. We talk about margins a lot here. It's a 48% gross margin. So they sell $33 billion of gases, or they sold $33 billion of gases in 2024. It cost them $17 billion to make those gases. So $16 billion is left over. That's called gross profit. As a percentage of the revenue, that's called gross margin percentage, and it's 48%. That's a high margin, especially for a chemical like a gas, which you would think would be very competitive and hard to make. So now we have SG&A and R&D, selling, general, administrative. That's what it sounds like. It's the company's management, the company's accountants, the company's salespeople, the company's lawyers. R&D, that's how much they spend on the tools that they need to process the gas. They don't spend very much. It turns out that this company is just printing money. Look at their operating margin. It's like a technology company's operating margin. Well, this is operating income. The operating margin is a percentage of the revenue. So it's 12 divided by 33. So 37% operating margin. Incredible. What a business to be in. They only spend $3 billion on their company. Let me put up. They spend $33 billion. They get $33 billion in revenue by selling the gases. They spend $17 billion to make the gases. So they have $15 billion left over. Then they spend $3 billion running their business. That's almost all of the cost of running their business, just $3.3 billion there, and $150 million for research and development. So total operating expenses that you need to operate the business is only $3.5 billion. Let's ban just internet. You're done. They are cooking their books, maybe. You need to go somewhere else. Maybe go to a mental institution. These types of people are a disgrace and disgusting, and they don't represent the best of our society. In the old days, we just throw you in the cellar, toss some food down there. I think we should go back to the old days. Just throw you in the cellar. Say, who? Oh, you hear somebody screaming? That's Cousin Steve. Yeah, Cousin Steve's not fit for the outside world. He lives down there. We just toss him some food every now and then. That's Cousin Steve. He lives in the cellar. That's what my dad told me they did in the old country if somebody was a loony. In the oubliette. Okay, so they have $12 billion in operating income. They have some debt here, so 256. Well, basically the interest is close to zero. Then they have some taxes they got to pay. They have some minority interests and controlling interests and all this stuff. So roughly $10 billion in profit at the end. Incredible company. I mean, what a beautiful business. Let's keep looking at last year's. And we are excluding depreciation. So let's see how the business looks after that, because they are constantly buying more equipment. So that's, very important point here. But this is assuming they never buy capital equipment again, which is not the right way to look at it. They do have to spend $3 or $4 billion on capital equipment every year. So let's Let's see what that looks like. And revenue doesn't grow. Didn't grow last year, was down 2% the year before. But printing cash, net income, adjusted net income, our net income, 9 billion to 10 billion. Now we look at the balance sheet. Cash, 5 billion. Accounts receivable, this is money their customers owe them, 5 billion. Inventories, 2 billion. Prepaid assets, 1 billion. And then the big kahuna, property, plant, and equipment, 25 billion. This is what runs Linde. You cannot make the gases without this property, plant, and equipment, these factories, right? Those factories cost money. They've spent 25 billion on factories. Galaxy Gas. And that's all there is to the company. $80 billion of assets, but the tangible book is closer to 40 billion. There's goodwill in there. I'd imagine they've done some acquisitions. Now let's look at the liability side. They owe vendors 2.5 billion. That's accounts payable. They have a boatload of debt, 21 billion, more than their $5 billion of cash. Okay, so if they have they have roughly 7 billion in cash and 21 billion in debt, 22 billion. So the enterprise value is $237 billion. But again, if we don't look at the depreciation, they're doing 10 billion in net income. So that's not bad. That's 23 times. But they're not growing. So would you pay 23 times for no growth? It seems expensive. But we're also not including the depreciation, but they do have to spend money on new plants every year. So let's look at cash flow from operations. Cash flow from operations is similar to our net income, excluding CapEx, but they have CapEx. We can't just exclude it. And when you include it again, they're only making 5 billion. And that's been declining. So with only 5 billion, you're talking about 48 times earnings. And this is an industrial gas company that should track GDP growth. So the GDP growth, if you think about it, is, if we go to a recession, people need marginally less industrial gases. Not a lot less, but marginally less. Their revenue might go down 5%. But their earnings would go down more, right? It's leverage. It would go down 10% or something. So would you pay 45 times earnings for a kind of cyclically exposed company with no growth? That seems like a terrible deal. and this is why I'm bearish, because this is a great company. Look at the return on capital. Okay, return on tangible assets. So tangible assets are what? Yeah, I'm going to even exclude cash. I'll do the Buffett return. Accounts receivable, inventories, and PP&E. That's the sort of capital. And then the return on that is 10 billion. So if you set up a plant to fractionate krypton, you said, I don't have $31.6 billion, but maybe I have $31 million, or maybe I have $31,000. Now, you might have some level what you have to even get started. I don't know that you can fractionate krypton or xenon with $31,000, but maybe it's $316,000. Maybe it's $3 million. So just keep multiplying by 10.